Good day, everybody. My name is Heleniq, and I'm coming to you live from a beautiful sunny day here in Cyprus, representing Women of Truth and these incredible thought leaders that have joined me in a year-long partnership to revolutionize the future of women's health. We've also collaborated with some thought leaders on truth marketing, really helping professional women and many people really around the world look at how they can present a more authentic, original, personal branding in the work that they do. And one of our thought leaders for that project was Alex Vitilo Gabay. And she's quite an incredible entrepreneur herself. She helps heart-centered entrepreneurs and high achievers to obtain financial freedom. And this was something very important for us to explore during this great change that our whole planet has gone through recently. She's also really good at helping leaders deal with their overwhelm, and she gives people very specific tools on how to get financially free and powerful in their lives. Welcome, Alex. It's lovely to have you here.
Thank you so much. Very excited to be with you all.
Yeah, it's always great talking to you because you are one of these people that lives on the rim, on the bridge between very spiritual and very professional business-minded information that comes through the teachings you give. And I love very much your consultancy called Breathing Heart. So I wanted to get to know you a little bit more. And of course, as a Woman of Truth tradition, we have these interviews to really know the woman behind the expertise. And today I wanted to know a little bit about you and what got you into this very groundbreaking profession where you've started moving out of finance in its traditional form and becoming a coach to help people get their financial freedom. So I'm looking for a very specific, challenging moment that happened to you that actually taught you something groundbreaking, life lesson.
I would say, unfortunately, I followed what I called the old paradigm, which was being in my comfort zone, i.e. the financial world, because I studied finance economics for many years. I worked in the financial world. And in order to change my life, I went through the suffering. So I experienced the loss of my husband. I became a widow. And that for me was really a moment where I was on my hands and knees. I had two young children. They're still very young at the time. And I took that moment for pausing and deciding, what do I want to do next? And I had a career break at that point because my husband wasn't well and I was taking time off. And the choice was, do I go back to work in investment banking, financial consultancy, and be there all day, sometimes all night, and you have to travel a lot, which means leaving my children alone a lot of the time? Or do I do something else? And to me at that time, I have no idea what that something else was, but I knew, no, I'm not having my children losing their mom as much. They lost their dad, and I don't want them to feel they're losing their mom as well. So it was that moment of really suffering and saying, what do I do now? And the traditional banking world wasn't an option for me at the moment. And then I trusted in the angels. I'm very angels-oriented, mystical creatures-oriented. And I just left at prayers. What do I do? Show me. And little crumbs started to be put onto my path, and incredible stories happened. And I just started to look into the mystical. And this is where I really realized, oh my God, I have psychic skills. Oh my God, all of my families have psychic skills, but we kept it hush. We're traditional Catholic, let's say it that way. We come from Italy. So it was a rediscovery of, who am I really? Who am I? So I came out of the spiritual closet, you may say that way. I decided to renegade everything financial because now it's spiritual. Until again, I felt, but come on, you spent a lot of effort and knowledge and you built something in the financial world. So finally, at the end, the light bulb went on and said, why don't you integrate all of the business component with the spiritual component? And not many people do that. So that's one of my strongest advantage for working with clients, because I can bring a bit of both, and depending on what it is that they need. So that's how I got there.
Very, very powerful journey to go from the loss into discovering your really special talent. And I know this is something, as I've gotten to know you, that's very profound and really stands out about you, that you are unashamed and tempered in your ability to really help people in a very spiritually grounded way. So the child that you were, the little girl, Alex, how she was at around 8 years old, and the kind of understanding she had about the world is something I'd love you to share with us by telling us what kind of advice would you give her, knowing what you know now about the world.
Oh, first of all, I have to say I had a very what I call privileged childhood because my dad was a diplomat and he was traveling the world, and we were based in Africa. So privileged in the sense that I got exposed to this beautiful, beautiful continent of Africa, and many cultures, right? Many cultures were living there, and so I call that a privilege. And at the same time, I went through many civil wars in that country. So again, what seemed to be, a little girl that was enjoying herself and meeting friends from all over the world, these friends would always change. I would always move. And every time you had to start from the beginning, I was thinking about it today actually. I lived a lot of my days in a curfew, not being able to do this or to do that. It was dangerous. There was a war outside, outside the city. And even that didn't really faze me that much. Somehow I thank my family for that. We very, I think, adaptable and very open to, we show up the best we can and we do the best we can. And we're very grateful for, the conditions that we receive. So what would I tell to my 8-year-old self? I would say just keep on smiling and keep on seeing the bright side of life, because that's really going to serve you well. And being lighthearted, even though some people may think, sometimes you're a little bit superficial or you don't pay attention to, the news, for instance. I don't watch the news because I find them depressing, but it really serves me well. When you own it, it can bring a different view of the world. So yeah, be lighthearted, do things with humor, don't take life too seriously. That would be my advice.
Yeah, so you had quite a sobering childhood, even though it sounds very adventurous and very extravagant and exotic in that it went around the world. You also have to experience some very hard realities, and so you would tell her to kind of not take it so seriously and not take it to heart so much. So we reach now what is probably the biggest reason that I started these interviews many years ago, was to understand the journey that women make into personal power. And so I ask this question to you that I asked now over 80 women around the world, is what do they and what do you now think is the biggest lie that women believe, and what is the truth? So there's so many different ways to understand struggle and challenges, and of course, we want to believe that gender doesn't have such an impact. But in the study, I've really wanted to ask my thought leaders to help me understand from their own journeys, also working with a lot of people in the world, and many of them being women, what they struggle with the most. So what do you think women get caught up in? What's the lie that they end up believing? And what do you think is the truth?
This is such a beautiful question, Heleniq. And I would say, at least from experience, the biggest lie came from me. And one of my, before becoming a spiritual teacher, one of my biggest lie to myself was I wasn't as good as men. I used to my dad was very successful and my mom followed him. And my dad kind of decided, it would be good for you to do finances. I'm a more artistic soul, let's call it that way. And I just took his advice and I just thought, he knows better than me, he's successful. Why don't I do what he says? And then my husband was very successful and the boyfriends before him were very successful. So they never said anything. Even my dad always encouraged me to be independent, to be the best, to be really have financial freedom. But I had this tendency of playing small. I had this tendency of, I'm going to put this man or that man or all the men for the matter on a pedestal. And even in the investment banks, it was primarily men dominated. So again, I would say, they're doing things better than me. And this is the biggest lie, that we are not less than men. We're not less than anybody else, but it's very easy to put someone else's first. And I think women maybe are a little bit more inclined because we become mothers, or we're genetically programmed to be mothers if we choose to. But that also means sometimes putting somebody ahead of you, thinking about caring for another life before yours. And this somehow has been conditioning us from, by traditions, by all the different areas. We all know, the history, how history goes. Women were all not always regarded as equal. So somehow I made that my truth. And that was very limiting, especially when I started a business. Because you cannot run a business. The one thing I used to say to myself very proudly, looking at my husband saying, oh, he's an amazing business owner. I'm not a businesswoman. And I would go around chanting this mantra, I'm not a businesswoman. But guess what? How was that impacting my business when I started my business, to have all of these layers of still, this mantra playing in the background? So I would really encourage everybody to just question what you think it's your truth, and unravel who you really are. Allow yourself to be powerful without shame and without having guilt that maybe you're gonna abuse your power, because there's not such a thing of abusing your power when you allow the universe to guide you. This is my strongest message, I would say.
So you highlight so well the struggle between wanting to be equal, do whatever you are encouraged to do, even by the men in your life, but somehow picking up the message that you're not quite as good at whatever it is as they would be. And I'm going to go a little deeper with you, because I know you can feel into things, and ask what you think could be reasons that we tend to do that. Because in these interviews, it's very much a common trait that most of the women I've spoken to have that as one of the versions of the answers to this question, is that we're not good enough, and that it buries itself very deeply into the female psyche. So trying to unpack it, maybe you can help me shortcut my research a little and give me your take. What do you think is the reason that we end up doing that?
Well, one would be, we can look at history, right? When we shifted from the matriarchy to the patriarchy, and just women were not allowed. It really shocked me. I was looking into some research that women alone were not allowed to have a business account. I think the early 90s. So until 1929 or 1939, a woman alone in Europe couldn't go and open a bank account. So that's already tells you the whole story, right? We just passed 2020. So that comes with so many layers. And so that would be one reason. And the other reason, like I say, maybe because, and again, this is a stereotype, but there is a little bit of truth in each stereotypes. Women have a soft heart, and women are very easy at supporting others. Women are very easy at seeing the good in other people. But by doing so, you risk that you put somebody ahead of you. And we're just programmed by nature, I think, to be looking, for beauty, to be looking for gentleness, to be looking for kindness, to be looking for success, to maybe our reptilian brains, we're cavemen, where we were supposed to stay in our cave and look after the child, and the men would go out and hunt. So there was some dependency there, where the man was doing the hunting. So it all comes back at play. It might seem, now, sure, we've passed over that. I think humans are very anchored in their nature, and it's very, very hard to think that you can ignore, whatever has happened in your ancestral line, in culture, in your own experience, and just think, no, I'm fine, I'm just born equal, and I'm just going to feel, I'm just as good as everybody else. And that could also be, and this is just a different subtle layer. Also, I see a lot of women don't feel safe, don't feel safe in their body again because they've been abused, because they are a little bit, again, it's stereotype, but weaker physically than a man, right? So when a woman and she's not safe in her body, so again, she's going to play small to avoid that attention. And like I said, it's a very subtle level. It's not in your face, but many, many women operate still on not feeling safe in their physical body, not wanting to draw attention, not wanting, to draw attention. Maybe in a relationship, be the one that gets all the success and and all the media coverage, and maybe the husband stays home. We're not there yet.
Yeah, so really, really helpful. I think I agree with so many of your points. There's so many of these layers to it all. And very important to then hear all these great leaders around the world talking about it and confirming that they too have had to go through this process of breaking this conditioning, of having to realize that they are more than that program or more than that belief, and that there's way more to their power and their purpose than what they got through society and everything else that's going on around us. We're coming now to this really interesting time where I know you and I have spoken about this when we first met, a time of so much women empowered business, networking, interaction, of great platforms for women to do many things. And there's really now, I would say, a very huge women's movement around the world, and it's been going on for a few decades already. And I wondered what you think about it. If you have anything to add to it, subtract to it, or a comment about it, what would you say about it? How do you feel about it?
Well, mine is more an invitation because, like I said, I see whatever we've been doing, let's call it the patriarchy. And we're very easy now, it's very easy to point the finger at men. And in my own experience, especially in business, a lot of the judgment has come for women. A lot of the you should do things this way or you shouldn't do things that way has come from women. So I think we should again pause and really, first of all, see, do we need to point fingers? Do we need to be judgmental? Do we need to really be so one against each other? That ultimately that's what it is. Because there's a lot of talk of sisterhood. There's a lot of talk of women rising together. There's a lot of talk of, yes, we should support each other. And yet when it comes to the practical, so nitty gritty of how do you run your business? How do you support another woman in business? In my experience, some women have not been as supportive as some of the men. So that's my invitation for everybody ultimately to support everybody, regardless of am I a woman, am I a man, am I running my business, am I a single mom, am I a single dad? There are many cards that have been played at the moment that I don't think are relevant in business. That creates a lot of noise.
Mm-hmm. That's a very interesting approach, and I think your way of solving it is that everybody support everybody, not so much this idea that we should be just supporting each other as women, but that we all support people that are trying to do what they're trying to do. So just so I can be clear, is your position that women are criticizing other women sometimes when they're in business, or not becoming a client, or what is this kind of non-supportive approach, the judgment that you speak about? What is that about in the way that you're referring
There's a lot of judgment still in, the way you approach a business. Like I use the word witch a lot because part of me likes that energy, the witchy energy. I say I'm part witch, part goddess, part fairy. If you ask me what are my mystical origin, that would be it, right? So, but there's still a lot of stigma associated to the word witch, and it comes from women. I never had a man telling me, oh, you cannot advertise on this channel because you're using the word witch. I had it for women. Or when I said, let's be all supportive, but then, don't mention this in my group, or don't mention that on my group. Men are not like that. Men are, or at least from my experience, if they offer a service and you're a professional, they're going to sign you up either to, work with you, or to, as a client or as a provider, regardless of the way you show up, the words you use. Like I said, as long as you're professional, you offer something that is integral, they're not gonna make that kind of judgment.
Got it. Really interesting. Thanks for mentioning it, because it gives us a very strong point here to remember that we still are carrying a lot of these stigmas, a lot of these ideas from a stigmatized past in the spiritual context, certainly as women, which is one of them. And we need to keep these in mind and keep working them through, cleaning them up, and getting ourselves on the same page about female power expressed in different ways. If we move now to what you're most passionate about, Alex, tell us a little bit more about you, your work, and what are you focused on right now?
Well, what I'm really passionate, I said, unfortunately, I get to do what I do the old way, i.e. through suffering. I had to be on my hands and knees before I found the spiritual business. And now I think with what's going on in the world, what's going on in the universe, we stepped into a new era. We stepped into a new paradigm. Hopefully, now it's the era of the goddesses, the era of these more feminine energies, the new age. And to me, this gives us an opportunity to up-level, to awaken our consciousness a lot more, which means to be doing whatever you want to do without having to suffer, without having to hit rock bottoms. And this is very much one of my messages. So again, to give a very practical example, I'm tired of seeing posts on social media that says, why are you stuck? Why is your pain? Why is this not working for you? What if we shift it and we start to say, what motivates you? What is your passion? What do you want to work on? What do you want to achieve? Without having to hit rock bottoms, right? And there is this understanding, or this phrase that, this was a stepping stone to my greatness. This pain was a stepping stone. What if you didn't have to go through pain to become the best version of you? What if you could do it through joy, through exploration, through aspiration? So to me, it feels that there was a time where we were called to do healing works, go through shadow work and really go to the pain and understand and heal. And now I feel you can really shift that and say, okay, how can I show up the best of me while having a beautiful life? Well, I don't have to go through grief. I don't have to go through a rape. I don't have to go, all of this really, really human, painful experience that activate a level of awakening. So
that's so much the next level, isn't it, really, that we can actually learn, evolve, and grow without having to go through the suffering and the pain. And giving ourselves a permission and the possibility to be able to do that, like you've just given us, is so important, because unless we do, we will just keep creating more and more of this struggle that we really, can evolve past. So when people look at the work that you're doing, I know that you even present in a masterclass with us, and work with some of my clients. So I consider what you do very liberating, and very much helps to liberate people. So this is what I hear in what you're saying as well. So the last tradition we have now in these interviews, Alex, is to give 3 words, powerful words that represent your wisdom to the audiences and listeners out there. So what kind of message would you have that can be separate words or all connected as one, whatever you like?
Oh, okay. So 3 words. So awakening would be one, in the sense of really wake up, pinch yourself, and ask yourself, am I awake or am I still dreaming? The second word will be aspiration, really to do things, like I said, rather than wait to be on your hands and knees and you're suffering. What can you aspire to right here, right now? And the last word would be that's the word I love, even though it might not seem that it's connected with the other two, synchronicity. Because when you start to work with synchronicity, then you definitely are awakened and you can aspire to whatever you desire, that synchronicity is going to bring it to you. And for those that think, oh, you cannot make synchronicities, there are specific ways to activate them again that are, well, I think it's one of my strengths, to activate things that seem might not be possible otherwise, and yet there is a way. So
beautiful words. So aspiration, awakening, and synchronicity, and how we can activate very specific ways of really calling ourselves awake in this time and being stand to develop and grow, learn, and become more of who we are without the suffering and struggling. And I thank you so much for putting this all in front of us today, because we have permission from you and a reminder from you that this is possible. And to everybody out there watching, try and remember these words. When you see them out there, think of Alex. You can use them as a magnet to everything you've heard today. Aspiration, very powerful word. Awakening, very powerful word. And synchronicity. Thank you so much for your time, Alex. It's been lovely spending time with you again.
Thank you so much. Thank you,
everybody.
So much.
Thank you to everybody for watching. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching. Bye.
So why is it so